Den härligt krispiga ljudbilden i det här introt är signerat Alexander Marton. Han kommer framöver ta fram det bästa i våra inspelningar i vår nya podcast Future Skills.
Och Future Skills syftar på att inspirera dig till att göra dig framtidssäker i en värld som utvecklas allt snabbare. Mycket som vi snackat om här i 25 minuter också. Men nu så blir det tydligare. För vi kommer att blanda laserfokuserade 10-minuters avsnitt med längre intervjuer och en tredje sorts Cameo-avsnitt. Alla de här kommer vara på engelska för att vi ska kunna snacka med internationella gäster.
Future Skills släpps inom kort på iTunes och de flesta andra podcastplattformar. Vi kommer länka till podcasten i vårt vanliga veckobrev. Om vi får be om en tjänst så är det att du direkt betygsätter oss och lämnar en review, så kommer vi högre upp på listorna och nya lyssnare kan råka på oss. Vi kommer släppa första avsnittet på måndag 19 mars.
Och idag, som Micke tidigare sa, så har Alexander Marton klippt ihop våra 3 första Future Skills-intervjuer och skapat ett riktigt späckat avsnitt som tillsammans är 25 minuter från vad totalt innan är 6 timmars inspelat material.
Varsågod.
My advice to people today is to look around and critically realize that's where you should put on some Marxist glass and look at the world. You have to realize that the world around you thinks not very highly of you as a human being today. It thinks you're a child and it wants to reward you for anything you want at a given time. And it's ready at very low cost and almost no effort to give you what you want at a given time. Whether it's a hamburger in your mouth or a gold star in a book or whatever, like you're a good boy or you're a good girl and you've done things well. And that's where you get lazy and you get obese. You basically become corrupt. And you're corrupted into infantilization. We're moving into a very confusing age with a lot of chaos. We're not saying hundreds of millions of people are going to die. That could be the case. What we're saying digital libido is that at least on a mental level, this is going to be incredibly confusing. We're going to see lots of aggression in the society because people behave that way when they lose track of where they're at.
What are the specific signposts that you are seeing right now?
The first signpost you see today in contemporary society is the infantilization of the society. And we have 2 things to blame it on. One is the nanny state, which is why we study Scandinavia in the new book. And the other is consumer society, which is why we study the United States. Because the United States and Sweden are the 2 perfect examples of these 2 extremes. The nanny state and the consumer society both foster us to state children our entire lives. Meaning, for example, we can explain why half the population in the United States are obese. They're obese because they're children.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate form of infantility to walk around with a fat body and not being able to stop eating because you feed yourself with tits constantly. And we have so many signs of this infantility in our society. And we look at the current debate and we step backwards and start looking at the bigger picture. We discover that, for example, the social justice warriors out there are infantilized, insisting on the right to be infantilized. And the only way to approach them actually is to say that, okay, you're a social justice warrior and you're a victim of something, like the wrong hair color or skin color or a gender or whatever, that's your problem. We don't know. Okay, so you're very obsessed with yourself and you're very obsessed with being a victim. Okay, that's the definition of a child. Okay, that was okay when you were 2 years old, at best. It's not okay when you're 22, and it's going to be utterly pathetic and dangerous when you're 45. Digital Libido, Sex, Power and Violence in the Network Society is the title of the book. And we look into archetypes because we sincerely believe that individualism, the way we know it, is dead because collaboration is the shit. And it's what we will do because of the internet. So finding out how to collaborate in the most efficient way possible and the most sustainable way possible is the key to everything. And I think a return to tribal archetypes and see in what way different archetypes fit in our society today is absolutely key. And that's why I talk about priesthood, for example, or I talk about leadership and other things that actually are aspects of tribal life. And what we work with in the book is something we call tribal mapping. If you've got a slightly bigger team, say you're 5 or 6 people collaborating, you need one generalist as well, who knows what everybody's up to and what everybody's good at and can see that ahead of the curve, so to speak. That's the priesthood thing. And the priesthood thing is somebody who assists the leader of the team. The leader is really the person who is the specialist of what the team specializes in. So it's the person who personifies the expertise of the team in relation to other teams. So if you're a hunting team, the best hunter in general, is often the leader of the team. But the priest in the hunting team or the coach who's assisting is usually somebody who knows what the other guys are good at. And he's not really good at anything else except seeing collaboration for what it is. And I find that very interesting. The new book that Jan Sandquist now writing, Digital Liberty, we look a lot into archetypes. And the priestly archetype is incredibly important, especially at the times we live in right now. In a way, I would say I'm a psychoanalyst, and I like to kill individualistic psychotherapy as we know it today, because I don't think it works any longer. I think the first thing you should do with the person is take them out of the social arena, isolate them, and then start looking from the outside in. Like, where do you fit into the jigsaw? What kind of personality are you? What kind of archetype do you have? How do you contribute towards others? What is your strength? And what are your weaknesses? And when people can map this, what we call trauma mapping, suddenly their life starts to work. Because they start to behave as the archetype they should have been all along, instead of wishing they were something else, or pretending they were something else, or thinking they should be something else. And that is the key, I think, to really great collaboration.
How do you find out who you are? And how can you train to be better at who you are?
You find out who you are by sitting down with other people on your own gender and ask them. If you try to imagine who you are for yourself, you might end up in wishful thinking, or your lack of self-confidence might speak to you, and you degrade yourself by not finding your position. The trick is this. Go to older men if you're a man, or go to older women if you're a woman. That's what we always did in the tribe. The older members of your own gender are probably the most likely to point out what your strengths and weaknesses are and give you a challenge you can live up to. A challenge must never be above your head, because if it's above your expectations, you will fail and lose self-confidence. Your challenge is always be just one step above where you're at. And then when you achieve the challenge, you're ready for the next one. And we need to go back to the idea that the only hierarchy that exists in the original tribe was the one between older and younger. It doesn't necessarily have to be that case today, because it was actually a hierarchy built on knowledge and information. The only place we could store information was in people's heads. So obviously an older person knew more than a younger person. Now when we store information outside of our own bodies, we have an equal access to information. And in a way, 21-year-old can sometimes be smarter than the 68-year-old. But life wisdom is still something that only comes with living for a long time. So you go to people of your own gender and check with them. And if you really think you're getting close to your archetype, go to an older person who is that archetype. Capital will always go to where attention is, but attention doesn't have to move to where capital is. So we live in an attentionless society today, when whoever gets the attention and can keep that attention will also have the power. And this is exactly what people do when they create nodes in the chaotic landscape the internet is today. And these nodes are built on truth and quality. And if they're built on truth and quality, people will return to them because they need truth and quality to guide themselves through the chaos. Meaning you get a phallic node that is like your lighthouse, and it directs you where you should go. And since it repetitively looks for truth, it will lead you right. And you will then belong to a network of people who understood that. And they will even further enhance the power of that node by contributing to that node. And that's exactly how you build power in the internet society, and we call that netocracy. So being netocratic is essentially understanding that I am phallic myself, I'm a grown-up, I take responsibility for myself, I'm going to speak the truth at all given times as best I can, and I'm going to associate myself and surround myself with people who can also speak against me if needed. And anything online today that works operates exactly like that. It was only a matter of time before Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, and Jordan Peterson had a TV show together. And they get even more millions of viewers because of it. So what happens is that intelligent machines find each other, and intelligent people with courage find each other, start supporting each other, and create massive online success phenomena that the old media can only dream of.
So that is how you should prepare yourself for the future. I mean, if we assume that there will be big societal changes, then what you need to do is associate yourself with good networks, contribute, prove yourself, provide value, and thereby becoming part of networks that will both protect you and keep you sound. Hi Martin, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Last time we talked about cryptocurrencies, and you're quite skeptical. Could you elaborate a little bit on why?
I'm skeptical against cryptocurrencies, but I've sort of nuanced my view on blockchain technology, and now I actually think that blockchain is going to be quite disruptive in many ways. But I still don't think that cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin are going to be a viable application. I mean, I see blockchain as sort of an internet 2.0. I mean, we had internet, that was a decentralized way of sharing information, and I think blockchain is a decentralized way of keeping track of ownership. So I mean, that's a really good thing, but I mean, Bitcoin is supposed to be a currency, and the thing that doesn't make Bitcoin work as a currency is that you don't have a scarcity the way that they say you do. I mean, they say you only have 21 million Bitcoins, but you can fork them infinite amount of times, and you can create as many altcoins as you want. So you don't really have scarcity, and you also don't have any intrinsic value in a Bitcoin. You have intrinsic value. There's value in the network, much the same way as there's value in Facebook, but you don't have that by owning a Facebook account, like the same way you don't have value by owning a Bitcoin. You can't do anything with your Bitcoin. So you don't have intrinsic value and you don't have scarcity, so it makes it very difficult to use as a currency. And it's not being used as a currency now, it's just used as a speculative asset because it's too slow and it's too expensive to transact in now. So it's lost all its purpose, and yeah.
I think what you're saying about the fork is pretty interesting, because if you look on Wikipedia, if you look on Forkster, they don't have a lot of good information. All they say is it's
just
happened.
A picture of a fork there.
Yeah, but it's like they're not. It's not going to give you an impression that that's something that can happen. If you look at the page, it's like it's happened, but it's no explanation of what it means or that it could happen again or why.
Yeah, and I've heard the explanation. Well, you know, it's just a couple of forks. It's not going to happen again. But I mean, who knows? I mean, they've forked it 2 or 3 times, like just last year, and some people argue, well, I mean, they create fiat currency much faster than that. But I mean,
even if they do keep forking, even if they fork 100 times, does that really matter? Since one of the forks, one of the iterations of the Bitcoin could be the winner. What they're doing is going through a Darwinistic process to find the best sort of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case, but then you don't know, how would you know which is the winning fork?
Oh, no, you don't. So you can't buy it now as a store of value.
Exactly. I think blockchain is going to persist and be a really interesting technology, but I don't think it's going to work by using tokens and miners that we have today. I mean, we have this new, I don't know if you've read about Hashgraph. It's a new technology where you don't even need miners, you don't need tokens, you still have this blockchain network. So, and I mean, if you can relate it to internet, I mean, I think it's going to be the way we pay for internet. Today we pay for internet through ISPs, internet service providers. You pay a small fee and you get access to the internet. It's going to be the same way with blockchain. If you want to use an application for blockchain, you're going to pay a small fee, and maybe you'll have miners that compete for that fee in a pool or some way. But there's not going to be a need for a very expensive token the way it is today.
Your best guess of this is that even if you could pick the ultimate winner, that winner would still not have a significant value per
No,
per
I
unit.
think it might have a small value, much in the same way as, I mean, you pay a small fee for accessing the internet, but it can't be a huge value, I don't think, because of these things that we talked about. So,
do you have any interest in investing in this like a so-called China trade, where like the saying goes that if you have a product and if 1% of the Chinese buy it, then it will be very valuable. Are you interested at all in putting any amounts at stake here in cryptos?
I would really like to invest in sort of firms that get involved with the blockchain technology. There's one firm in the US called Symbiont, which tries to identify technologies that are going to sort of try to take out the middleman, because that's where I think the big winning sort of aspect of blockchain technology is, where you can eliminate middlemen like banks and credit card companies, I mean lawyers and exchanges, all these things that cost a lot of money that can be used, that can be done more effectively through a blockchain technology. That's going to be very interesting. Obviously going to be some huge winners here, but it's hard to say who they're going to be.
Do you think that what we are seeing in terms of quantitative easing the last 10 years, maybe in terms of a possible end to the petrodollar system and similar movements in the macro world, do you think those are postponing or pushing forward the fourth turning, or don't matter at all?
I don't think it matters that much. I think this would, central banks are definitely at the heart or the root of the problem here, which I think is very important for people to know. I mean, it's because I'm not afraid of sort of Trump or what he's going to do, but I'm more afraid of what's going to come after Trump and the socialist winds that are going to follow, because now everybody's going to blame this on capitalism, even though this is not capitalism's fault. I mean, this is the fault of central planning and central banks and government and on the meddling that we haven't had capitalism for a long time. The Fed has been sort of manipulating prices and markets for a long time, and they've tried to push risk out. And risk is sort of like energy, where you can't create or destroy energy, you can only change it. In the same way you can't get rid of risk. You can only push it in time, and that's what they've done. They pushed the risk out in time, but sooner or later it's going to come back. Sort of like trying to contain a volcano. You can just put a lid on it for a while, but sooner or later it's going to explode. And then since we've been pushing this for such a long time, it's going to be really, really, really bad when it sort of finally explodes here.
What did you learn from Soros? Because I know you read a lot about him.
Yeah, no, that's one of these books that I just go back to and read every once in a while. Partly because of motivational reasons. When you have a rough time, you go through a rough time and you sort of go back and see how he did. Because he has this real-time experiment in the Alchemy of Finance where he talks about his trading in real time, and it's really just informative to see how he got through the bad times. But the most interesting thing about Soros, I think, is his take on why the whole name Alchemy of Finance, where that comes from. Mm-hmm. And I mean, his whole thing is that analyzing the markets and trading and finance, it's not science. It's not a scientific approach, because you can never find the truth. It's more like alchemy, which the difference between alchemy and science is that in alchemy you're just trying to get operational success. You're just trying to achieve something. You're trying to achieve turning base metals into gold or precious metals. And it's the same in trading. You're not looking for a truth or something. You're just looking for an operational success. And that's why it's more alchemy than science.
You have two societies. One society, there's a guy called Kamprad. He invents a company. And he employs tens of thousands of people. And he gets goods to a lot of other people. And he pays taxes. So he can have 600 more hospitals and 6,000 more roads and whatever. And then you have another country where he doesn't exist. So there's a lot less in that. In this country, they think that he stole that money from the workers. Or somehow from the people that didn't start a company. In this country, they think he's the best thing since sliced bread. Fast forward 100 years, which society do you think is most prosperous?
Obviously the second one, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this first one, they believe that there's a cake, and if you get a piece of the cake, I lose that. And I get that sometimes, which is very sort of strange. I can get that from various sort of views. As if I've stolen my wealth or my success from somebody else.
But what do you say to them? Do you say
it somehow
anything?
Was easy because I'm a man, because I'm white, because I'm middle-aged, because I'm whatever it might, because I'm in Sweden, that it was easy. Whereas almost everybody I know that I worked like psychos, really committed to something, being passionate and purposeful and just kept going at it as much as I have, they're successful.
I always come back to Robinson Crusoe when asked things like that. I wonder, who did he steal his wealth from that he built up on that island all alone?
I perfected myself in old tasks and was forced to learn new ones. In short, I learned to master everything in my island except myself.
I would completely reform school and base it on learning, not on getting jobs. If you look at old Athens had wonderful schools where people learn a lot of unnecessary things like math and philosophy and everything else, and you studied for a very long time. And based on those thought schools, the most advanced society was created. And I think that we study far too little, and we care too little about knowledge. And we also close the doors to those institutions. So if you have fire in the belly and you're prepared to try things and do things, that is not championed by anyone.
Do you have any hopes that this will actually come to fruition?
I mean, what we're trying to do, we're trying to start an institution, an academy, where you come in based on fire in the belly. And where half of the people coming in will be newly arrived or people from places that usually don't get this kind of chance. Half of them would be from other places. And where you create a company and you come in based on your idea. And one thing you do is build the company. So we help you build that company, and we're going to put money, the best network, the best teachers, everything at your service. We're also going to teach you how to build a company. So that's the academic part. And then you can pick what we call business skills, marketing, sales, or other business skills. And then we teach you super skills, which are things like understanding complexity or integrity or conflict resolution or self-esteem or completely different things. And we believe that these entrepreneurs with fire in the belly from Somalia or from Uzbekistan or whatever will create wonderful companies if they have the right kind of guts, the right kind of stamina. And I see that much more often in foreigners than in Swedes, because a lot of them, it took a while to come here, and it was pretty tough to come here. And when you face that kind of adversity, it makes your bones stronger and probably better as an entrepreneur. So I think that we have like this wonderful, wonderful unused asset in our foreign community that now does dry cleaning services or kebab stands that could build the Spotifys of tomorrow. I see that in the society that I want us to build. So coming back to what I said, we need to find a new narrative and a new purpose. We need to have ways of developing as individuals throughout life, supported by a society who doesn't say, well, all values are equally good. No, that's not as good as this. There is, as you said, there's different levels of, like there's levels in education or levels in work. There is levels in personal development. Keegan is extremely interesting. Robert Keegan, a Harvard professor, that is like the Maslow of our times.
Really? I don't even know about this.
Yeah,
guy.
he's phenomenally interesting. And basically what he says is that we start our lives with just being impulse driven. And then you sort of want food. Wow, then it's warm. And a couple of % of all of us stay in that stage. And they're usually violent criminals, they're in jails, and they're in other places. Then you become a little bit older, you realize there are other people, you're 3, but it's me first. You just take. We all know people that are like that as well. And then you become 15, 16, and it's like, wow, it's all about the others. Am I in the right guy? Oh, is this embarrassing? And your whole life is defined by looking at others, right? And then you go you become 30, 40, and then it's like våra, mindfulness, the inner journey, and you want to be on a beach in Ibiza and meditate. And then you realize that's an ego trip as well, and you just think about yourself all the time. So you become 60 and become Bill Gates and want to cure malaria and give back to society. That's unfortunately how we develop, and very few reach above the 3rd level. I think it's 60% of all the business leaders in the US are level 3. They think only and define themselves only in relationship to what other people think about them, the system, the salary, the position, and everything else. And if society is built that way, you get guys like the Wolf on Wall Street. And another thing they say is that you cannot understand the higher levels reasoning. So if you tell the Wolf of Wall Street, what do you think about environment? Shouldn't we really try this? Oh, you sly bastard. Do you have any insights on that? Environment gig? That's so cool. How much money are you going to make? They cannot understand. So that's why you cannot discuss with ISIS that the Jews are actually super cool and contribute a lot and have a lot of Nobel Prizes. It doesn't compute, right? They need to develop as individuals. And when they do, they realize that sexism is pretty uncool. And it's probably not so smart to believe that what they believe religiously. And then it's like a meta cure against a lot of bullshit because you develop as an individual.
Right.
And depending on which stage you're in, you have completely different ways of looking at the world. If you're number 4, you want to reduce complexity. You're a leader that wants to sort of solve problems and reduce complexity. If you're level 5, Bill Gates, you want to find complexity. How can we have much more difficult tasks to solve, like malaria, right? And it's very, very interesting to see. And they're different. I mean, already the sort of the philosophers in 18th century Germany, they also saw this lifelong development. And I think it holds true for societies as well. Afghanistan is not a society developed enough to have some of these conversations, right? Sweden is. The US is somewhere in between. And I think that it's extremely important that if you can understand and agree that you need to develop your own way of understanding the world and embrace more complexity, then all of a sudden, if that is super important to have a good society, to have happy people, depression is going up like crazy, sick leave, according to depression, up 70% and so forth. All of these things are functions of us not having the tools and the self-leadership to manage a more complex society.
Right. Was it stage level 3, where it's like you're a teenager and you're just looking to other people and trying to imitate? I think if you think about that in terms of a feedback loop perspective, I feel like social media and the internet, especially since people grow up with it, so if you look at that as like a feedback loop, that feedback loop is just being reinforced stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
And people are going to stay in that level 3 teenage years much longer.
Absolutely.
And the longer they stay in it, the harder it becomes to build a discipline and think for themselves.
It's super real. For them, and I mean, if
it's like
a
hyper reality that you're like a bubble.
If you want to see sort of where you are yourself, think about how much you compare yourself to other people. If you compare yourself a lot to other people, or if you base your own view on things and on yourself based on other people's views, if that is a very strong component, that is typical level 3. And often there's also we and them, fucking immigrants, I don't like the Jews, blah, 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 blah. And you can cluster them as something completely different than you. And then you see that they're, of course, individuals as well. It becomes more complex. And then you see at the top, probably if we ever get there, it's all one, right? It's a system that is interlinked. And if you have really poor conditions for kids in suburbs, they're going to rob you regardless of where you live at some point in time, because opportunity is not shared. So it becomes your job to share opportunity so you don't get robbed. These things are stitched together.